Thank you for having us. My remarks are going to be a little different from what you heard here. I have my wife, Jackie, Victoria's mother, with us. And I'm happy that this group has been put together. But what I'm unhappy about is there's 14 empty seats up there. How urgent is this to Congress if there's only 3 people here instead of 17 that could be here? What other business does Congress have that's more important than hundreds and thousands of lives being lost every year? Her 129 will be 150 today. That was 2014 numbers. This is growing 10% a year. We will lose 50,000 beautiful children this year to this epidemic. Our future generation, our future Bill Gates, our future Steve Jobs. Music you're never going to hear. Stories you're never going to read. Movies you'll never see. We're losing a whole generation of people, and it's nice that we all came together and we're going to show you our pictures of our children, and everybody's going to say they're sorry for us, but there's no action. There's no call to action, and that's what we're looking for. And today 150 are going to die. More than the Paris terrorist attack. You won't see it in the newspapers, you won't see it on TV. The president's not going to make a speech about it. No one's going to come out and talk about it. But those deaths can be prevented. There is a miracle drug out there called naloxone that less than 1% of the population even knows about. And the drug that's out there, the drug companies that make it are gouging the public. It costs 60 cents worth of naloxone to save a life. 60 cents. The cheapest you can get it in a nasal spray is $37.50, and you have to buy 2 at a time, or $75. The police departments can't afford it. The first responders can't afford it. Every first responder, every policeman, every fireman should have it. Every dormitory should have it. Every medicine cabinet in the country should have it. Every addict should carry it in their pocket. You know, people with heart problems, they carry nitroglycerin. People with diabetes carry insulin. People with food allergies carry EpiPens. But no addict carries naloxone. Most of the deaths that are represented in this room could have been prevented if a naloxone was available. But either because of the price of it, or because no one knows about it. I don't see the government doing public service announcements on naloxone. I don't see the drug companies talking about it. I see them talking about every opioid under the sun, and now they're even saying if your opioid makes you constipated, here's another opioid that'll solve that. There's no cry. There's no cry. This is the worst thing that's happening in this country today. We're under attack, and it's not by ISIS, and it's not by Iran, and it's not by North Korea. It's internal. This could become the fall of the Roman Empire if we continue this. Today it's 50,000. Next year it'll be 55,000. How many is enough? And when is somebody going to get out there and start doing something about it? I keep hearing about money isn't appropriated. Bills in Congress right now, they've been in there for months because I've been up here lobbying for them, and they're still in Congress. And the Senate passed the bill, but Congress wants to make their changes. People are dying by the minute, and no one is crying out, doing anything about it. It's time that it happens. The worst phone call you can ever receive is a phone call like I received when my daughter died. And since then, it was a wake-up call for me. I had no idea. I didn't even know what marijuana looked like. I had no idea what was going on in the country. But I decided I have a large company. I turned it over to my executives, and I decided that the rest of my life will be dedicated to saving lives. And I've traveled this country. I've met with your Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. I've met with the director of the DEA. I've visited rehabs all across the country. I've talked to experts. In 11 months since my daughter died, I've earned a PhD in drug education. And what it's taught me is how little it's being done, how few people know anything about this epidemic. It's not an epidemic, it's a pandemic. And if there was a nuclear rocket coming from North Korea right now, everybody would be mobilized to do something about it. This is worse. This is worse. We have a 9/11 incident every 3 weeks in the drug world. Nobody's crying out about it. I don't hear any outcry. We've got to get things done, not a week from now or a month from now. We have to get it done now. People have to get motivated. We have to not only keep people alive, but we got to stop this epidemic. It's one thing to service it, but let's stop. Every rehab I went to, and I sat in on dozens of addicts telling their life story. Every single one, without exception, started experimenting with marijuana when they were 14, 15 years old. And they say it's not a gateway drug. Believe me, it's definitely a gateway drug. And yet, there's laws against marijuana, but Congress is letting states legalize it when there's a national law against it. Florida is now trying to legalize medical marijuana. Yes, it'll help a few people, but when you start telling when kids see legalized marijuana, you try to tell them not to use it. That's where it starts. We got 25 million drug addicts in this country today. We have 25 million former addicts that are in recovery. 50 million people with their parents. That's half of our population. Why isn't there some public outcry? We could stop it by doing random drug testing in the schools. We could stop it by flooding the market with naloxone. We could stop it by education, but we have to do something. The ball's in your court. Let's do something, not just sit here and listen to us and go back to your offices and get on with the next business. Today, let's do something now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's why we have so many members coming and going to join us. We did pass 18 bills last week. We had members from all over the country, both sides of the aisle, coming together to pass those bills. We did have a bill on naloxone, and it will make it more readily available. And I'm glad that you're here to be part of the education so that we can use the opportunity to educate the American people about it. And I'm certainly glad that all of you families are going to be talking to members of Congress about the urgency of getting this comprehensive package of bills to the President to sign and to make sure that we have the resources. That's just the beginning, and we appreciate your call to action. So, love to hear now from Sharon Legore, the mother of Angie from Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much for allowing me to share a bit about my story and what heroin has done to my family. My name is Sharon Legore, and I live in York, Pennsylvania. I want to share with you the effects that heroin has had on my family, and it's impossible to share these effects from over 18 years of our family in 3 minutes, but I'm sure going to try. So what I want you to understand, that each little small couple sentences represents years behind it. This doesn't happen in a day. But I want you to understand that this is a family disease, and it's not just about the addict who needs treatment. There are mothers, fathers suffering. There are brothers, sisters suffering as well, and extended family members. This is the first time I've shared this, but here goes. My daughter started using drugs around the age 14 and 15, and as you said, marijuana started it all. Her addiction continued. She was a follower, so when people offered her things, she wanted to be part of the crowd and took it. Her drug use escalated to heroin. She called me and told me, because we had a great relationship, "Mom, I'm using heroin." I was just like, "What, Angie, are you doing? What are you doing?" Sorry. Looked like a green light to me. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'll never inject, Mom. I'm just snorting it." I was so naive and ignorant that I didn't know enough about the drug to know what it was doing to my daughter's brain. She told me 3 months into her drug use with heroin, we had a phone conversation. She said, "Mom, I want you to know that I feel like I'm in a deep, dark hole that I cannot get out of." I told her, "Angie, go back to treatment." She got a beep in and hung up the phone. 3 days later, her body was found by the police, thrown down a muddy embankment next to a creek by her drug dealer. He left her lie there from Monday night until sometime late Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, when she passed. And then he didn't want to be implicated, and that's what he chose to do. A lot behind that story, but let me go on. 1 month after my daughter's death, came home and found one of my sons on the floor from a suicide attempt. We later found out that he felt guilty for his sister's death, that he should have protected her, that he should have told what he knew. He didn't tell us what he knew about her heroin use and how bad it was. We took him to Hershey Medical Center, and they admitted him into the psychiatric floor. I literally could not move. I just lost my daughter, and my son is in there of an overdose. I was admitted to the cardiac wing, so we're in 2 separate parts of the hospital. I actually broke my heart from the stress. I take medication to this very day for that. A lot in that paragraph. A lot of years in hurt. 1 year later, my youngest son had a breakdown.
When he found out about his sister, he acted like nothing happened, and we couldn't understand that. But every child takes this differently. Every child. I thought the one I didn't have to worry about was the straight A, B student. He's the one that tried to take his life. I thought my youngest didn't understand. You know, he's 12, 13 years old. He didn't understand. But in 1 year, it exploded. And my son began to self-medicate at age 13. And it wasn't long. His drug of choice was cough syrup. But it wasn't long before addiction set in and he developed severe mental health issues. And he's given me permission to say this, but he is now diagnosed bipolar, schizophrenic, and borderline personality disorder. A lot in that. Let's go on to the next. My oldest son, Christian, was in a car crash. Went through the windshield, and as a result, developed a bruised brain, had glass in his skull and neck injuries. He was given opioids for the pain. It's, here we go again. I thought, prescription. It's okay. Follow the doctor's advice. And I was totally wrong. Once we stopped prescribing the medication, we found he was already addicted to heroin. And eventually, he moved on to a cheaper drug, heroin. Let's move on to the next way it's affected my family. My son is an addict. His son is in his mother's custody, but there was an issue with an abusive stepfather. So my grandson Tyler, when I talked to him, he said to tell you his name, was placed in the custody of children and youth. Trust me when I tell you, this is his grandmother. I want nothing more than to be able to help him. My husband works nights. I travel with my job. And I can't handle the trauma that this child has endured because of drugs in his family. He needs help. He needs mental health help. Eventually, my son worked on his recovery and was able to get custody of Tyler back. My son did well for a while, but the addiction to the opioid drug remained, and my son relapsed, causing a spiral down. Violated probation, ended up in jail. And just a quick note, we're not only talking about our families, but I want you to know what happens in the jails. These young people brought in, my son included, was put in prison to cold turkey off of heroin. He tells me that there's so many kids in there, young men, who are throwing up and going through this alone without support. And I just tell you that to please keep in mind that it extends far much into our correction system. My grandson had to be taken back into children in youth custody. No foster parents want to take a traumatized teenager, especially when they find out that there is addiction in the family. Yesterday, I received a call from my youngest, begging me to get him out of jail. He's been sitting in the prison, heading on 3 months next week, in solitary confinement, waiting for treatment. There's nothing worse than for a mental health patient that also has addiction to board them and leave them alone. And it's happened many times to my son. He has a co-occurring disorder. That's another issue. A lot of our addicts have co-occurring. They've been through so much trauma. I ended this call with Sean, and I headed straight on to a court hearing for my grandson's placement. They brought my oldest to the hearing in chains, so the judge could have him there as they decided where to send Tyler next. The decision was made. They took Chris away, and my grandson will now go to a lesser constricted facility that can address his trauma and mental health issues as a result of addiction in the family. Over 18 years, and heroin is still devastating my family. My daughter is dead. I have 2 sons in prison currently. I have a grandson sitting in a detention center because there's no place to put him. He asked me that I tell you this, so I promised him I would. And he said he wanted you to know, when he was born, his life was supposed to go in one direction. He said, use the hand signal. He said he wanted you to know, because of heroin, his life is like this. Make no mistake about this. It's a family disease. We need an opioid strategic plan in this country. We need a call to action, and we need Congress to stand hand in hand with the families across this nation. We represent a very, very small few. The CARE legislation needs to get to the president's desk, as you've already heard, but we also need funding to put that in effect. We need funding to educate our families. We need funding as a lot of our families have started organizations. I did myself as a dental assistant. I left my job to become an advocate. I didn't even know what an advocate was, but I wanted something done. 18 years later, I still want something done. We need the funding to put these laws into effect. Maybe they're not perfect. We can come back and add on later, but get us started. We need tools. We need resources. I speak for my daughter, who cannot speak. I speak for the families who have lost children. I speak for those that's in my own family that have children still suffering, even as adults, suffering from heroin addiction, opioid addiction, and their families who are out there with no hope, no help, and still waiting for answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, and you are a very effective advocate. And it's really important for all of us and all of our colleagues for you to come and share this story. I know it's painful, but for us to understand the magnitude of the impact across families and throughout our society. One of the theories that I heard was that back in the 1970s, that we had a major public policy shift to empty out the mental health hospitals, the big institutionalized mental health hospitals. And it was a good thing for people to move closer to home and not be confined, and to, hopefully the theory was that they would get the mental health treatment in their communities. And over time, that was not funded sufficiently. And this person shared this theory with me that instead what we've done all across the country, state legislatures, the Congress, in every single state, is fill up our criminal justice system with people who are suffering from co-occurring illness, substance use disorder, mental health issues, and we're not giving them the treatment that they need. And then we act shocked, totally shocked, that they come out and recommit crimes because they've had no treatment and end up back in the hospital, back in the criminal justice system. I have one county in my district, because we've been trying to tackle what are some innovative solutions to get past this. And I just want to tell you a quick story. Sullivan County, a small county in New Hampshire in the western part of the state, and they realized that the drug crime was going up so fast. This little county was going to have to add 200 beds to their prison. It's expensive with tax dollars. And they said there's got to be a better solution. So 3 people got together and started a program inside this small county jail. And they had in-house treatment. They brought the treatment in-house. And they had all the time in the world. So they can do a 90-day program. They can do this program as long as they want. And she said to me, we have a very low no-show rate. And everybody laughs, but reality is it's hard in a rural community to get to your appointments and to get to your rehab. And the key to this program is understanding the changes in the brain, because when they come out, they have an entire year where this county, one by one, will help them with job training. They'll help them with going back to school. They'll help them with transportation. They've even had situations where they go back to their own community, their bad habits, bad influences. They say, fine, we'll help you move to a new community. And do you want to know, they have dropped their recidivism from the 80th percentile to the 20th percentile. And think of the impact on the families, on the communities, the productivity. Mr. Siegel said music that will be written, books that will happen, incredible things from an entire generation of people. So I really appreciate you being with us. We'll just take a very short break while we switch to our next panel.
20 seconds.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
I
don't know the
apologize.
diligence
Dylan did
to
such a great job. I
It's okay,
just,
no worries, no worries.
please do,
Liz
please do.
Olszewski, I'm the executive director of Horses Healing Hearts, the program he's on.
Oh, great.
Child of an alcoholic mother, she died when I was 24. So addiction is addiction, opiates, alcohol. I just want to speak on behalf of the children of addiction, and there's 11 million under the age of 18 right now. It's not a small number. Every week these kids come to this program, and during that 2 hours, we hear the most unbelievable stories. One 10-year-old boy said to our child facilitator, Miss Rhonda, do you know what addiction is like? And she said, no, what? And he says, it's like a kidnapper that comes in and takes my dad. And his ransom is my dad's happiness, my dad's job, and our family's happiness. And he said, but you know, what I want to know is even the most crooked kidnapper will give you the hostage back after he gets the ransom. And he said, he has our ransom. Our family has nothing left to give. I want to know, when do I get my dad back? And he said, we don't have anything left. And another 12-year-old girl who just this Christmas lost her mom to heroin overdose said, I'll tell you what you have left. You have hope. And the reason you have hope is because he's still alive. And I don't have that hope because my mom's not alive. And she, 3 months before her mom passed, her mom was trying to reach out to her. She was on the streets through text, calls. And it becomes so difficult for the kids to, understand that they love this person and they hate the disease, and how to differentiate between the two. That she couldn't take it anymore. She said, I can't take the calls, I can't take the text, and she cut off communication. And then she got the call, the dad got the call Christmas Day. So now she says, I have to wonder, would that last call, if I'd taken it, could I have said something that would have kept my mom from overdosing?
Oh, she can't torture herself.
She can't,
Yeah.
but these kids, they suffer, and they want help, they want education. They're not taught the proper, healthy way to live because they're not seeing it. They're not seeing it emulated. So we need, in this bill, and everybody wants something, law enforcement, treatment, we're all pulling for all these funds, but we've got to look at this as a strategy, not so reactionary. I know Nicole puts out a statistic that says sons are 4 times more likely to use and become addicts when they're older. You've not only got the genetic predisposition, now you've got the learned behavior. So unless somebody steps in and helps them learn proper ways, this is the beginning of the problem. This is just going to exacerbate itself. We don't even want to think about that.
No, I mean,